Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Planning Committee work for Borough Council. Those of you who've been here before notice we've got brand new microphones, brand new screens. They need to hear. Well, can everyone hear me at the moment?
It's worse than it was before.
It is.
It's not working.
This is a slightly odd meeting as it's really a meeting taking place in the 2018 to 19 municipal year. And the councillors here were all appointed in May last year. It is the last meeting that will take place. The next meeting will have a brand new planning committee, I believe more members. Unfortunately, two members who were appointed last year are no longer members of council, so I'd like to pay tribute to them, John Jones and Tim Holt. John has made his mark, I think, on the committee, and Tim had a very long, distinguished period as member, and for the last 3 years, chairman of the committee, and I think we all, those of you who've been here for, recognise his honesty and integrity in the very fair way he chaired the meeting. So on to the meeting, and do we have any apologies for that?
No apologies, Jack.
Thank you. Minutes of previous meeting members, do you have any comments on the minutes? Proposal for the minutes, please. And second, in some order, Councillor thank you. Those in favour of the minutes? And those against? Do I get a sent there? Thank you. I just go back to the procedure. I'd like to begin by asking the planning committee members to introduce themselves and start with Councillor Ross. Right.
If I can work out.
Can you switch mine on?
We haven't had any training on this, Chairman. Councillor Angus Ross, representing working with that before.
Wayne Smith, member for Hurst.
Rochelle Shepherd-Dubay, member for Winch.
Alan Richards, member for Norris in Working Town.
Chris Barrow, Vice Chairman and member for Working Without.
Bill Sohn, member for London.
I'm Carl Doran, member for Bournemouth and Whitegates.
Thank you. And the members are assisted by our officers. Introduce themselves, please.
I'm Callum Wyndham, I'm the clerk to the committee.
My name is Mary Seven, I'm a solicitor giving advice to the committee this evening.
Clara Corrigan, Strategic Development Manager.
Judy Kelly, Highways Development Manager.
Thank you. The planning officers on the left will be presenting the applications. And we'll move on to, this is a quasi judicial committee with formal set procedures and conduct. Firstly, the planning officer will present each application, then we'll call in turn only those who have pre-registered to speak. Please come forward to the table. The microphone is controlled by the, I think it's a black button, it used to be a grey button, it's now a black button of the base. The time limit is 3 minutes for each category speaker, and that will be strictly enforced. So please ensure that you get your key points across within your allotted time. Members of the committee are interested in the quality of what you have to say and not how long you speak. I emphasise that only those who have pre-registered to speak may speak. No others, including town or parish councillors, agents, applicants, objectors or supporters, are permitted to address the committee, ask questions or interrupt the meeting. Following the planning officer's presentation and the comments of registered speakers, the planning committee members will consider, question and seek clarification for the application, and we hope reach a decision which may or may not comply with the planning officer's recommendation. And finally, a reminder, the local planning authority's role is to determine any valid planning application using local and national planning policy. Our role is not to suggest alterations to schemes, whether they're a good idea or needed, whether they're too costly, or whether there are alternative uses. Thank you. I must now remember to sign the minutes. Right, declarations of interest. No, I do have a declaration of interest, which is a prejudicial interest in item 190395, and that as Deputy Executive Member for Regeneration. This application is closely linked with that programme, and therefore I feel I cannot hear it or vote on it or speak on it, so I will leave the room. And as I don't have a Vice Chairman here tonight, we need to elect a chairman for that item only. And I'd like to propose Councillor Ross. Could I have a seconder, please? Okay, seconded by Wayne. Those in favour? Any against? Okay, so Councillor Ross will chair the last application. Item 88, are there any applications to be referred or withdrawn?
Yes, Chair. Item number 89, which is the land of south of Cookbush Lane, has been deferred by the applicant for this committee, and the intention to do more work on it to come back later on.
Thank you. I don't know if any members of the audience are here, but sorry for that application. If they are, they might like to leave at this point. Nobody moves, so that's good. The word must have got to those people who were going to come for that one. So we move on to 90, which is application number 190198, Towclere Road, or Forest Road, Northern Distributor Road for Wokingham. That's on page 159. And the case officer is Sarah Morris.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, this application is a full application for the construction of the western section of the Northern Distributor Road. I won't read through the full application description up there. I'll move on to the second slide, if I may. So this application is for a section of the North Wokingham Distributor Road, or NDR, known as the West of Old Forest Road section. The NDR route in its entirety will connect Coppard Beach roundabout to the east with Reading Road to the west. The road is required to mitigate the impacts of the effects of additional traffic associated with housing growth in North Wokingham. The requirement for the road is identified in the Council's core strategy, the Infrastructure Contributions Supplementary Planning Document, the North Wokingham Strategic Development Location SPD and subsequent planning permissions. The above slide shows the full extent of the final agreed route of the NDR as approved by the WBC's executive in 2015, and this application is the westernmost section as highlighted on the left within the shaded circle. Other sections of the route are either already complete and operational, such as through Matthews Green Farm, Bell Foundry Lane, Kentwood Farm East, and sections at Heath Patch Beach and Kentwood Farm West are currently under construction. WBC have recently submitted a planning application for the section through Ashridge Farm, which is currently under consideration. The entire route is due to open in 2021. As mentioned already, this application is for the westernmost section of the NDR, the application site being located to the northwest of Wokingham, south of the M4, close to its junction with the A329M. The site is made up of a small section of Towclere Road and Old Forest Road, with the remainder being predominantly undeveloped land, comprising a small parcel of the existing sound, open field, the Millennium Arboretum, including an ancient woodland, a section of the Reading to Wokingham North Down Railway line, and the Winnish allotment site. The allotment use has now ceased and the facility has been relocated to a new site located on the north side of the M4. There's just a photograph on the above slide which shows the new site with occupants beginning to take up their plots. The next slide shows the general arrangement of the road, which would comprise a single carriageway approximately 1.4 kilometres in length and approximately 7.3 metres wide, running from the south-west end, where it will tie in with the end of the approved Winnish Relief Road scheme to the east, where it will connect with the existing NDR through Matthews Green. As with other sections of the NDR, the scheme includes provisions for pedestrians and cyclists by way of a shared-use 3-metre wide pathway along each side of the carriageway and a 2-metre green verge along all the areas where these are achievable. The photo on the above slide shows a section of the completed NDR through Matthews Green, showing the road and green verge and shared pedestrian cycle pathway alongside. As can be seen above, the route will pass over the railway line, through the Arboretum and onwards before it connects with Old Forest Road. close to where it will cross over the Enbrook stream. Prior to the alignment joining Old Forest Road, a small spur road will link the southern section of Old Forest Road with the new road. This would provide access to residential dwellings located off the southern section of Old Forest Road. Once the road connects with the existing Old Forest Road, it will follow the general alignment to cross over the Enbrook, retaining the existing bridge before then continuing around to join with Towtley Road, where it will again generally follow the existing alignment before tying in with Queen's Road section on the Matthews Green development site. At the point where Towtley Road currently meets with Old Forest Road, a new junction is proposed, and the northern end of Old Forest Road would be accessed via the junction off the NDR, and priority here would be for traffic travelling along the NDR. This element of the scheme has been amended since initial submission, as the original details proposed access to the Metro Centre being solely via the new junction onto Old Forest Road. However, that arrangement received a number of objections from businesses located within the Metro Centre who consider that it would not be acceptable for the types of vehicles they use, such as HGVs, needing to access and egress from their premises. The above arrangement reflects the amended design, which now proposes a separate filter lane to give direct access into the Metro Centre. The occupants of the Metro Centre were consulted on the proposed amendment and no objections have been received. The noise assessment report accompanying the application identified that a small number of dwellings located on Towtley Road may experience a moderate increase in noise arising from the operational use of the proposal, and further properties were identified as potentially being eligible for noise insulation measures. Therefore, a condition was recommended which requires a further assessment to be carried out with details of proposed mitigation measures to be agreed and implemented to ensure the proposal would not result in significant harm to existing residential amenity. The bridge proposed over the railway will retain a 2 metre wide space at the closest point between the retaining walls and the existing railway land boundary fence. This will ensure that an informal network of paths through the Arboretum can be maintained, including passing under the bridge. There will be embankments in this location. However, these are proposed to be planted with a mixture of woodland trees and grassland to soften the impact of the road in this location. The above slide shows the general arrangement of the bridge over the railway. At the point in the construction stage when the bridge needs to be installed, overnight working hours outside of the standard working hours will be required. The proposed condition 8 relating to working hours is therefore worded to allow flexibility in this respect. However, the periods where such overnight work can be carried out will be controlled by Network Rail. The scheme will be delivered by Balfour Beatty, who are contracted to undertake a number of the Council's infrastructure schemes. They've recently completed the Belfoundry Lane section of the NDR successfully and will manage the construction process of this scheme also, which also means that the Council has greater control over the construction. The proposal will inevitably see the loss of a number of existing trees, particularly in the Arboretum area. However, a significant programme of landscape mitigation measures are proposed, including a large extended area of public open space of around 7 hectares, additional woodland planting, including the planting of over 2,000 trees, many of which have already been planted as shown in the above photo, as well as hedgerow and tree planting along the verge of the road. Such measures will ensure that the impact of the road upon the existing landscape is minimised and will result in the benefit of an extended area of public open space. The proposed landscaping measures will also serve to create new ecological habitats, and WBC's Ecology Officer is satisfied that the scheme will result in biodiversity net gain. It is acknowledged that parts of the site, particularly the area close to the Enbrook, are located within flood zones 2 and 3, and there have been instances of flooding issues to properties located in Summerfield Close and Ashton Road. However, flood risk improvement works are proposed in the vicinity of these properties, which would result in a betterment of the existing situation for these residents. Final details of such measures will be secured in conjunction with details to be submitted under Condition 10. The surface water drainage strategy for the proposal has been developed using sustainable urban drainage measures, whereby the surface water will drain onto either side of the road via a network of swales and filter trenches, which eventually discharge at controlled rates into the existing watercourse of the Enbrook. This approach is accepted by the Environment Agency as well as WBC Flood Risk and Drainage Team. The above final slide just shows how the overall scheme relates to and will tie in with the approved Winnersh Relief Road scheme, which was approved in October last year. In summary, it is considered that the proposed scheme has been designed to minimise its impacts upon its surroundings to provide for a safe, functional and well-landscaped scheme with no significant harmful impacts on neighbouring properties and appropriate mitigation measures where necessary. As such, the application is recommended for approval, subject to the conditions contained within the report. I would like to draw your attention to the members' update for this application, which seeks to replace the revision 03 of the landscape general arrangement drawing with revision 4. This is not a different drawing to the plan attached on the agenda, it was a simple typo error on the plan submitted. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Sophie. We have one speaker, Ian Haller, on behalf of the applicant, Woking Borough Council, please.
Good evening, members, officers, members of the public. My name is Ian Haller, and I'm here representing the applicant and our view towards the application you are here to determine tonight. The application covers the construction of 1.4 kilometres of new single carriageway, pedestrian and cycle facilities, a new road bridge over the railway, improvements to Townley Bridge. Land for the scheme is secured. I would like to extend my thanks to the team that have dealt with the preparation of the application and the scheme to this point, and the cooperation of the numerous individuals in reaching this milestone. As you would expect, the application has been through a central consultation process, and during this time we have had some objections, and those comments have been considered, and I'm pleased to say that we've made some amendments to the application to ensure that the scheme is as positive for users as possible and to assist them with that. A key impact to development in this area is flooding. I'm pleased to report that there is a slight betterment to flood resilience to that currently. And this has been achieved through the addition of pipes, culverting, the help of transferring water, attenuation infrastructure, minor realignment of the Enbrook, reshaping of the floodplain areas, and positive provision of bunding adjacent to other properties, which will take them out of flood risk. Both the Environment Agency and the Council's Flood Risk Manager are satisfied with the proposals. In addition, the scheme has some environmental impacts, and the team has worked diligently to mitigate these through a series of enhancements to offset them. The new road occupies approximately 2 hectares, and 7 hectares of country park is being created, including the planting of 2,500 trees. Creation of woodland paths linking to the existing SANG, and 4 ecological ponds as receptors for reptile habitat and translocation. A number of trees do need to be removed to accommodate the road and the structures we need to build, and these will be replaced at a ratio of 20 to 1. This number is in addition to the 2,500 referred to earlier. Construction project of this size carries many risks, and none come higher than the construction of a new road over an existing busy railway and the management of the numerous Network Rail processes. We have agreement in principle for design and construction of the bridge, and a draft bridge agreement has been drafted in readiness. As a consequence of reaching this point with Network Rail, track possessions can be confirmed immediately should consent be granted tonight. Should consent be granted, our detailed design process will be completed by the autumn, with commencement on site for enabling works this summer and main construction commencing next spring. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ian. Right, I open this up for members to discuss, and as is conventional, the local member who has unnecessary hand up. Michelle.
Yes, I want to have an error corrected on this application.
Put your microphone on.
I wanted an error correction on this application. It's in Winnish, it's not in Woking. It's actually 90% in Winnish, 90% roughly, and about 10% in Woking. So would you please correct that and put that, to change that? And particularly perturbed about that because everybody seems to forget that Winnish was actually there. And the sang at the end is the Winnish sang, not a Woking sang. Thank you.
Sorry, which working are you referring to? The parish is Winnish towards Winnish.
The parish in this is Winnish.
It says Winnish.
It says Woking.
It says Winnish in mine.
It says Woking here. It says Woking in the...
You're referring to the text?
Yes.
Okay.
The application here says Woking. Your application here says Woking. Thank you. I would like to particularly remind people to look at the ward boundaries by doing this. We appreciate it. Thank you very much. I do like the idea of most positions do need the road. There's no question about that. And this is a compromise over what the residents in the area actually wanted. They didn't want to go down Tapley Road. All of the original consultation, and the borough decided to do it anyway. But we do need the road. There's no question about that. And Winnish does need this road, part of the Winnish Relief Road as well. Thank you.
Angus?
Thank you, Chairman. The third chart that we've got in our agenda shows speed limits on it, and it's slightly confusing. My gut feel is that the right-hand end it becomes 30 and round the corner, but the way it's written there, 30 and 40, this is confusing. Just for clarity, do we know what the speed limit along this Newfield Road is? I can come back with a couple of points.
The speed limit is going to be 40 from Reading Road up until just south of the Old Forest Road junction, at which point it becomes 30 and then ties in with the rest of the NDR, which is subject to 30-mile-an-hour speed limit.
I thought that was important. It looked a bit confusing. Just two comments. I was in a way surprised that the fire service were not consulted or was not reported here. But the other positive thing for me is the benefit it will have for the town centre in taking more of the current through traffic out there. So in planning terms and benefit terms, I support the application.
Okay, will the fire authority be consulted?
I'd have to double check, but all the usually they would automatically be consulted on the SDM applications, but it may just be an oversight. I'd have to double check, so apologies if they weren't, but they should have been.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else wish to speak? You coming back in for a show?
One more thing, I'd like to thank them for actually putting the trees back there, especially the ones they take out of the Winnish Relief Road. Those were also replaced by this particular trees that they're putting in 2002. Thank you.
Thank you. For no more, Carl.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of quick questions, really. The shared pathway for cyclists, pedestrians, what form will that take? Will it be marked out as a cycle lane separate kind of thing, or will there be some form of curbing in between, or will it just be a path that they're going to share? And also, there's 3 pedestrian crossings apparently, one of them which is signalised. You could point out where those are on one of the diagrams, that'd be good, because I couldn't quite work it out. And the other thing, the noise insulation grants, it talks about possible acoustic barriers, and it kind of says that if the barriers are put up, they would only reduce some of the grants by a small amount. Is that basically saying that if we were to pay for acoustic barriers, that we'd also, or someone would end up paying the noise insulation grants pretty much as well? That was kind of my reading of it. So it's kind of going against the idea of the acoustic barriers. Yeah, I've got a couple of comments, but I'll let you answer those questions.
I can answer a bit about the pedestrian cycle routes. So it's 3 metre wide shared routes, so there's going to be no segregation between pedestrians and cyclists. They will obviously be separated from the live carriageway by a tree line verge. Typically, through the rest of the NDR and South Woodlands River Road, there's regular head cycle bars along the route and particular junctions, so there are new signs for the cyclists and the pedestrian or the child. So that's the idea for that. Crossings, do you want to point out in the presentation?
So the Embrook Park is...
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, apparently people can't hear what's
There's
being
no
said.
loudspeakers here at all.
Can't hear anything actually.
So please get close to the microphone as a compromise.
Or can we get these
Can you
speakers?
turn the volume up somewhere?
Can you hear me now? I'm talking or no? It's echoing back, is that it?
These are not on at all, these speakers.
No, yeah, they might not be.
They're not speakers. They're not on.
If I shout, is that better?
Better without the microphone.
Okay, I'm good at shouting, so that's fine.
It's a new system.
We're just pointing out the pedestrian crossing. The question was raised about the signalised one, and it's from the Embrook Park, whoever knows it. But it's basically up here. As you come around, there's an existing park into the new public open space, and that's where the new signalised crossing will go in.
The question relating to the noise insulation grant. So my understanding is that the number of properties that are identified as potentially being impacted by the scheme that we're looking at installing acoustic barriers, which would reduce the number of properties eligible for the grant if they were installed. However, from a planning point of view, we wouldn't like to see acoustic barriers because of their visual impact. They often get vandalised, and also the practicalities of where they would be located. So what we want to see is further assessment, and it's likely that those properties would still be eligible for funding from these noise insulation regulations.
So you're thinking of double glazing, for example?
Yes.
Yeah, measures such as double or triple glazing, also internally, things like Venetian blinds, acoustic doors, a variety of measures, and these would be offered to the residents. Obviously, it's up to them whether they wish to pursue that option.
Okay, I'll just take Mark and then I'll come back to Carl, then we've got two more questions. Mark?
I think the decent scheme is a good idea. I'm supportive of it. Just a quick question. There's not supposed to be any parking along any part of this road, anyway, is there? Will there be signs just saying no parking? There won't be yellow lines on it, presumably, will it? How will it be indicated that there's no parking anywhere along it?
So the idea is that there would be double yellow lines along it, and
The whole length?
Sorry?
The whole length of it?
The whole length, that's right,
Oh.
yeah. And the section that's just been completed at Belfinder Lane already has the double yellow lines in place.
Okay.
Carl? Thank you.
Yes, the only other thing I was going to say, I just want to make a general comment really. When I read this at first and it said road being driven through Arboretum, that was kind of, I've hold that's bad. Which it is, but let's say I'm impressed by the amount of trees that are going to be planted in lieu of that. So I don't have any problem with that really. It's a kind of impressive amount, 20 to 1. Seems like kind of a ratio I could live with. So I'm pretty much in favour of this.
Thank you. So no further speakers, go to the recommendation on page 110 with the typographical amendment in the members' update. I see those in favour of this application. That's unanimous. Thank you. We can't, unfortunately, we haven't got enough time to fix the speaker that's not working. Can you hear me? Yes. Yes? Sometimes. Only sometimes. Can you hear me now?
No. Switch your mic off.
It's supposed to
I'll show that to the microphone. It's all right if you turn it, or it goes at the back. Right, okay, that's that one dealt with. So we move on to number 91, which is Trident House, page 145. Simon Taylor is the planning officer.
The application involves the change of use in an existing two-storey office building on King Street Lane, the addition of a third storey, the removal of the roof, the addition of a third storey, a single-storey rear extension, the creation of 12 flats, a combination of 9 one-bedroom flats and 3 two-bedroom flats. Context of the surrounding area, you have Sainsbury's supermarket across King Street Lane, some retail premises in Reading Road, residential to the north-west, and then some office warehouses to the south. They are evidenced in photos here. The office warehouses, generally 2 stories in height. To the north you have a car wash on the corner of Reading Road and King Street Lane, and then the residential properties here. You can see the beginning of the residential properties. One submission was received from the residential property to the north in relation to residential amenity impacts, overlooking dominance, solar access issues. The proposal is recommended for approval. The primary concerns related to provision of sufficient parking. Sorry, this is the existing site plan. The primary concerns related to provision of parking. There are 12 parking spaces, 10 at the rear, 2 at the front, including 1 disabled space. Equates to 1 space for each unit. There are conditions in relation to standard conditions in relation to drainage, landscaping, car parking arrangements. The access along the side laneway here is shared by the neighbouring property to the south. There is a condition dealing with management of that access way and how that will be managed. The extension to the rear is shown in this photograph here. It will involve some landscaping, parking in this area here, and the extension here is single story in this area here, so it's felt there's no major impact to these properties across the boundary to the north. Thank you. Chair.
Thank you. We have one speaker. That's Paul Fishwick, who's Ward Member for Winnersh. Good evening.
Thank you very much, Chairman. My objection is there is insufficient parking and no provision for visitor parking. There are 12 flats, as been described, consisting of 15 bedrooms with provision of 11 spaces and a disabled space. Therefore, residents and visitors will be parking on the highway in the adjacent streets. The service road, which is adjacent to Trident House, is already full every day with commuter parking. Therefore, vehicles will be displaced into local residential roads, such as Allnet Avenue. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And again, members, and it's Rochelle again.
It's all about what Charlie is the whole committee. 12 parking spaces is inadequate for that area. There is no other parking in the local area that's convenient, other than unless they get arrangement with Sainsbury's to park in there, and I don't think they're going to do that. The service road, as Paul mentioned, is usually full, probably about most of the time, because it's a kebab van at the end of that service road, and when the office workers are gone, people are coming in to get kebabs. There really is there is no other place to park. You can't park on King Street Lane at all. And you have to park on all that drive, which is just not a good idea. It's a very small road and it's not a good idea at all.
Okay. Could have a response to the charge that it's not sufficient parking?
Parking does comply with Wokinham's parking standards. The reason for this is because all of the 12 spaces are unallocated, so the properties won't have the benefit of a space allocated directly for themselves. When a developer chooses for parking to be unallocated, there's no requirement for visitor parking to be provided. Visitor parking is required only for houses where there is allocated parking at a ratio of 0.2 spaces per dwelling. But if all the parking is unallocated, as it is in this case, there's no separate requirement for visitor parking. So they would just share in the provision that there is in the site.
The public transport in the area with Blenheim Station and the bus service to Reading, working with Bracknell is pretty good. Is that likely to help?
I think it is likely to help. There's regular bus services along the Reading Road. There's also a planning condition, condition 8, which is for a car park management plan. So if there's any concerns that the parking is not being provided correctly, or it is starting to be allocated to particular plots or anything like that, then that planning condition can guard against that.
Thank you. Malcolm?
Thank you. I had 3 questions, and a couple of them have been answered. I still think it's not enough parking there. Even if you're living in a town, near a town centre or near trains, people still have cars, they own them, whether they don't use them every day or not. So parking, I think, is a bit under what it should be. The other question was whether the disabled space forms part of the 12, it does, but they're not allocated. That generally means it's quite tricky to control who goes into them now, but then you said it's managed parking. So is that managed all day long or just randomly going in? Because if you've got spaces that aren't numbered and allocated and people go in them, it's quite tricky to get on with finding space. So will the management be substantial or just an occasional wander around? Is it proper management parking around?
So the details of the car park management plan are secured by the planning condition, but there are a few bullet points. So one of those is that the methods to ensure that the unallocated parking does remain unallocated throughout the lifetime of the development. Arrangements for access to the car park at the rear of the site, details of gate operations, signage, and so on. I should have said as well that with all the parking being unallocated, there's actually only a requirement in our parking standards for 8 parking spaces to be provided, but obviously they are providing 12, so they're actually above standards.
I think, can I just add to that? So I know there's always an opinion there's not enough parking spaces by most people. There's only 1 space per dwelling, but it is the council's adopted standard. So well, that may be the case, but that's not for now. So the adopted standards, it's compliance with. So people may feel that there's not enough parking, but actually that's our standard.
Thank you. Paul?
Your first one.
It's just again on parking. Yeah, I agree. 12 parking spaces meets our standard. It seems crazy to me that we have a standard that allows that to happen. I know you say that that's not for us to discuss at this stage, but it is something that we need to look at, because if we've got 12 parking spaces, 12 flats, this is going to cause a problem in this area. Whether or not we can solve it on this one, I don't know, but it does need to be looked at, in my opinion.
Yeah, so as part of the local plan review that we're doing at the moment, parking will be looked at. And I know the consensus seems to be that 1 space per dwelling or flat is not enough. So that will be something we look at. Obviously you're working on it, the current guidance, and that's what we have to work with as officers.
I've got a few questions. Well, first, I kind of comment on the parking there. I can't agree with what everybody else has said. It seems too low, but accepting that it fits what the adopted standard is. I do wonder that we have a standard for dwellings that have allocated parking for visitor parking, but we don't have one for where it's unallocated. That seems to be a bit of a strange thing to have, but like I say, we've got a local plan going, so hopefully we can pick that up. Okay, it mentions in the agenda that and this is B1A office space, and losing it will be contrary to CP15, and that the applicant hasn't given any supporting justification for a proper consideration to be given to whether a departure from policy is appropriate. I'd like you to explain why that isn't the reason for refusal. That's first. And then the internal, I would say amenity, everybody says amenity, I'm not sure whether that's right or not, but I have a strange accent anyway, so amenity, the flat sizes basically, 6 of them are only slightly below the required standard, which should be 50 square metres. So why is that acceptable? I like to kind of get in above the standards when we're talking to developers. Yeah, so that's another question. And then if I'd like to, wearing my usual cape of Captain Affordable Housing, I'll come back to that in a minute, but I'll let you answer those questions first.
There's a previous application for this site for a larger scheme. It was dismissed at appeal. The issue of loss of office floor space was not considered at that appeal. So in that respect, it would not be in the spirit of the application to consider it now when it has been considered appropriate at a previous appeal. In addition to that, there are permitted development rights that do allow office conversions, which were the case in this building. That could be done in the future if that was the applicant's intent. That would mean that the office floor space would be lost anyway. Thirdly, there is the primary intent of policy CP15 is to establish office accommodation in core employment areas. Winnash Triangle is approximately 2 kilometres to the west of the site, so that's where the majority of the office floor space in Winnash will be established. So on that basis it was felt that the loss of the floor space would be acceptable. In relation to flat sizes, I draw your attention to the plan here. It's the refurbishment and reuse of an existing building. So there are certain areas, I'm not sure you can see the cursor, that 2/3 of the way through the building there, you've got beams that has defined certain unit sizes. And then at the back here as well. So looking at the scheme, the acceptable nature of the scheme, it was felt that reusing the building is a good outcome. The departures in the table in the report are less than half a square metre, so on that basis it was acceptable. The bedroom sizes and the living room sizes are acceptable, albeit the width of some of the bedrooms are not, but it was felt on balance the reuse and redevelopment of the existing building, it was acceptable on those grounds. Did you want me to answer affordable housing or that you?
Yeah, I've got a little bit to say about affordable housing, as always. Just to go back to that, it's just another little thing where, the parking gets adopted, but it doesn't seem good enough. The size of the flats, they're slightly below, but, it's still outside slightly. There's kind of this thing where I know that this exists in the planning legal sphere where we're trying to kind of bend over backwards to help them to build the houses. And that's the law. It's wrong, as far as I'm concerned, but that was where we are. And affordability here is another place where that's happened, I think. As it says in the agenda, 20% affordable would be required here, which would be 2.4 units. Because obviously it's a small scheme, the idea is that we go for a community sum instead, which will be £140,000. But the applicant has put in a viability assessment, which basically says that it's not viable to do that. In planning law, not viable means they can't make a certain amount of profit, which in this case is, the guidance now says between 15 and 20%. And that's the question I've got really. We are saying here that we're allowing them a limit of 17.5% profit. And there's a small figure, I think 2,400, something like that, that they're going to pay as a community sum because it goes slightly above that. I think it was 17.58% or something like that. Correct. Why, when the planning policy guidance, the new planning policy guidance says a range of 15 to 20%, are we allowing them to keep that extra 2.5% profit and not provide any affordable housing?
My understanding is that it's based on the location of the site, so 17.5% was accepted by our external consultant because that's an appropriate figure for the Reash area.
Yeah, Carol, I'll add to that. It's a difficult, it's a balancing act basically, where you have reuse of buildings, the cost is usually higher. So it's hard to do, and hence the space standards are a problem, because I agree they should all be a certain standard with conversion of the properties. What you get is you just can't do it in some cases. In this instance, because we have a planning application, it gives us a little bit more control over the site, because they could do it under permitted development anyway. So there is, I suppose, winners and losers to the policy itself, but that's the way. In terms of how you assess the viability, it's a bit of dark art, hence we get consultants in to look at it for us. And yeah, it's based on various things, build costs, fees, all of that. And our consultants for this area, as Simon was saying, agree that 17.5 is about the right figure. What you do is you end up getting in a very complicated and long argument over what the costs and what the benefits are for actually small amounts of money. So from a resource point of view, with council as well, if we have a viability consultant telling us that, we go with them. We won't argue. So I note your point that it is frustrating to see it slightly above the minimum, but because it's a conversion, that's generally what's accepted nationally.
Okay, I'll just say I kind of don't accept that, because I think the costs are included in that conversion and the profit comes afterwards. But I take the point to some extent. I just want to say thanks to Simon really for this affordable bit that's in this agenda, which explains most of it. I will say that I did spend an hour with a pen and paper today trying to work it out, and I still don't understand it. But I am from the party that Diane Abbott's in, so I'm not something to do with it. But yeah, so at some point in the future, it'd be nice if, when we do these again, if it was just explained in terms. Imagine I'm an idiot and work from there. Probably the best way forward, I would say. But I like it. Thanks very much.
Okay, I think it's a sensible suggestion. Maybe we could do that in future.
Yes, that's fine.
Thank you. Good. Thanks.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I think we've always questioned, because it's behind the agenda, the detail of the viability. We have to rely on the robustness of our officers and the consultants, but it doesn't often look good. In a way, so with the planning, the parking, I accept totally that it's within borough design guide, therefore we don't have a reasonable objection to it. I just make one comment on what you said, Chairman. My experience a lot of the time is if you've got buses and trains nearby, people might use those to go to work. So instead of taking their car to work, they leave it where they live to go to the gym or see mother-in-law after work. So I don't think it cuts down the number of cars. But anyway, we're in the limit, so can't object.
Right, that's a very interesting point. Michelle.
I'd like to remind you again, as Angus just said, that there's no requirement for parking. It's part of the borough design guide, which was set up at a point where people seem to not realize that 2.43 cars are the normal walk-in ownership per dwelling. And the borough design guide is not part necessarily of the local plan update, unless they're planning on updating the borough design guide as well. The parking standards are not part of the local plan update in any way, shape, or form. When are we going to update the borough design guide is a question for the officers necessarily, but I've lived in a flat like this in the past, and it's a scrum for parking every single time, and whoever happens to get there first is the one who gets the parking space, and it becomes a point of contention for the residents, and a point of, in some places, fights.
Yeah, Rushdown, I agree with you in some cases. I lived in a borough that handed out more parking permits than there was parking spaces, so I had the same problem. I suppose the context of revising that will all, it's in essence, it's a member decision. If you want to revise it, we can, the local plan team can do that as part of the local plan, and we should be revising it every few years to keep up to date in any case. But even though your concerns are there's not enough parking, we're working within the current regime, which says there is enough parking in the policy.
The borough design guide goes back to the time when we did everything before. It's been around for a long time, and it's way past itself, I think.
Yeah, you're right. Everybody knows that car ownership is growing at a fast rate, particularly
around here in the southeast of England. Wayne?
Yeah, you are quite right, Connor. It is top of the agenda in terms of the local plan update because it's probably our second biggest problem. Traffic congestion and housing in the borough. So it needs to be addressed, and as we still own the title of the highest car ownership per household in the UK, we have a bigger problem than most areas put together. You made a good point, Carl, because I raised the question of going open book on these schemes on two particular sites, one in High Street, Walgrave, where we visited, and that was a site that they said the viability, it didn't meet the viability. And I know it's not for now, but I think we need to go back and test this, because I wouldn't mind earning 17.5% net. You know, is it net or is it gross? Is it open book? Who QSs it? And is that the projected value? Because I watched with interest at the houses on the Walgrave Road, the High Street Walgrave Road, and how much they are going for, and some of them are already occupied. And it wasn't the figure that was as per the planning application. So, and the other side that I just checked with my colleague here in Wiltshire Drive, Wiltshire Road, that was another one we checked, and we went through a whole debate on this very planning committee. So I would like to test the rules on this, to say, when we go out to our external consultants, who are they? Are they RICS QS surveyors? And the parameters, and why can't we test the parameters? Because, you know, there is a downside here, because if they just converted them, like what's happened in Reading, where they're losing seal altogether. On this side, I agree with you, Carl. You know, we need to be a bit more robust, and we need to do more about getting this social housing, because it's the biggest, well, it's the biggest housing issue we have, not the amount of housing. But I think they're all things for the future. I don't see there's anything we can do tonight.
Okay, thank you. Right, Malcolm.
Yes, just go with a quick comment to come back to something. We noted that a couple of the rooms are slightly smaller than normal, but we sort of live with that. However, if you look at the ceiling heights, in some of those which have maybe just one bedroom or two, the ceiling heights are actually 8 inches less than an average. 2.5 metres, I think, is 7 foot, which is a standard ceiling height in a house. And on 2 or 3 of those, it's actually 2.3 metres, which is about 8 inches, I believe. So 20 centimetres, about 8 inches. So it's a smaller room and a lower ceiling. It's going to look a bit cramped. And there's not a great deal of space there for storage. And since there is no garage, people quite often store things in the garage, but there's no garage either. So it just feels a little bit of corner cutting on the thing. One feels if they put maybe one less apartment there, it would add a slightly bigger space available for those that were there in terms of storage.
So where are the ceiling heights referring to?
Page 164 refers to ceiling heights. And it says all of them are 2.5 metres, which I believe is 7 foot, standard height. And then 3 about 2.3 metres, which is 20 centimetres, that's 8 inches lower. And it's in a smaller room. So it's really good.
Do you understand what is the standard?
Unfortunately, things like building heights and that is actually building regulations, so it's not a planning. We can't assess it as part of planning. We can only do that where we have a listed building, where the rules are slightly different than that. But for normal,
comment on it, or it had no impact? Comment had no impact.
What's that, sorry?
So does that mean it's an invalid? Sorry, it's an invalid comment or query today? Can we make a comment, and does it have any impact?
You can make the comment, but from a planning point of view, we can't do anything because it's covered under building regulations. So it's building design basically. So they have to, as long as they meet the minimum standards for room heights and also for heights above stairwells and things like that, it's not a planning issue. It falls outside of our remit.
Okay, I'm seeing nobody else wants to speak, and no one's proposing any alternative outcome. So go to the recommendation on page 146. No condition changes in the numbers update. So those in favour of approving this application, please show.
That's 4. Against? 3, so that's carried. Application is approved. Thank you. Application, item number 92, application 190673, Lucky House in Wokingham, page 185. So yes,
The application involves the construction of a multi-use games area sports pitch at Buckley House School in Wokingham. It involves the demolition of 4 existing tennis courts / netball courts and the replacement with an 80 metre by 50 metre synthetic turf pitch illustrated on the plan above. It is intended for after-school use, for school use and after-school use and public use up till 9 p.m. in the evening. There's been 59 submissions received from neighbouring properties. Luckley Wood, 19 properties across to the east. About 35 submissions in Denby and Denby Close and Dyke Close. The primary concerns raised by the neighbours are in relation to noise from the use of the pitch, from light spill from the use of the 6 floodlights that are proposed to be used until 9 p.m, ecology impacts on protected species including bats, impact upon the character of the area, and traffic and parking issues. Dealing with the noise first, the Council's Environmental Health Officer has reviewed the proposal, including a noise report. The primary concern with noise in relation to a hockey pitch is the reference whistle and balls hitting the backboard of the hockey goals and in behind the goals when it misses the goals. It was reviewed to the point where the noise from general competition and from the balls hitting the backboard was acceptable in terms of the background noise level from the surrounding properties. It's 50 odd metres to the west and 75 metres to the east. It left the only issue being above the noise level being the referee's whistle, and it was felt that the extent of that impact, the limited nature of the whistle, was such that it wasn't warranting refusal of the application on those grounds. There's mitigation measures that are proposed by condition, including noise, rubber surfaces to the backboard and various other measures. There's also compliance with the noise strategy in condition as well. In relation to light spill, there is an illumination plan on the screen at the moment. It illustrates that there is minimal spill away from the lights. The lights are 12 metres high so that they project downwards. The type of light used is also, without knowing the specific details of the lighting, it is intended to be minimise the light spill away from the site and project it downwards and in towards the centre of the pitch. You'll notice the figures that are on the plan here that clearly illustrate there's no impact to surrounding residents in terms of light spill. As the secondary issue to that is, which was raised by numerous objectors, is the issue of light glare. So the proposal will be visible in the background of the night time from various residential properties, but given it was a major development location within the settlement boundary, it was considered to be acceptable. The impact upon protected species was found to be acceptable because the development was sited within the existing sports pitches. The one concern that was raised by the ecologist is in relation to light spill to the neighbouring woodland across the eastern boundary. and that is visible in these photographs here. So condition 12 does intend to further restrict the use of the lighting in the summer months when bats are foraging, generally 30 minutes after sunset. So that would involve a timer being imposed on the lighting so that it is switched off at certain times. The issue doesn't arise in winter months when bats are hibernating. Traffic and parking were considered acceptable. There are 89 parking spaces along the school grounds, including this parking area here. So it allowed for a slower departure or arrival of students because of after-hour use and a reduced peak, and B, the use of the after-hours use of the facility by the general public would be at a time when the parking availability was much greater. Subject to conditions related to the timing of the lighting, the noise mitigation measures and a community use agreement which would detail the general public use of it, including changing facilities and parking and other measures. The proposal is recommended for approval.
Thank you, Simon. I should say that we had a site visit yesterday, which all 7 members here attended. We have one speaker and one submission from a local member, which I'll read out. First of all, Mike Sheldon, please, arrested.
Good evening. First of all, can I just check that you can all hear me? Good, because this is quite important. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, good. On behalf of the residents, local residents of this proposed development, we are absolutely astonished at the lack of detail and objectivity in the report prepared for this meeting. It appears very dismissive in the nature of the responses to the many objections. The report unfortunately contains numerous inaccuracies and contradictions, far too many for me to deal with in the limited time allowed. I can only assume, although I've just heard to the contrary, that no one from the planning department has visited the site and viewed it from the perspective of a local resident. From the point of view of the visual impact and light spill, planning and design statement quotes that the playing fields are surrounded by mature trees which screen views into and from the site. Equally, the Arvtech agricultural method statement states the same. The new sports facility will be screened from public view by the retention of trees. As you will see from the pictures in front of me, that hopefully you can look at, this is clearly not the case. This is the view from one of the properties on Denby Close. This is a gross misrepresentation of the facts. I've also just heard mention of the measurements from the pitch. Whilst it is difficult to ascertain the exact dimensions because of the nature of the submission, we estimate that the closest corner of the pitch to the Denby residences is approximately 30 metres. In the report, the figure of 51 is mentioned, 75 for the western side. Once again, inaccuracies. I move on to loss of privacy and security risk. The position of the pitch will result in spectators, waiting teams and coaches congregating on the western side of the pitch adjacent to the Denby Close properties, losing all privacy as everyone would have a clear view into those gardens, as you can see once again from the picture in front of me. The lack of a full security risk assessment is negligent, and to consider the current risk posed by Wokingham Netball Club as the appropriate benchmark demonstrates a complete lack of understanding of the practicalities of the proposed development. It is interesting to note that a back report has been submitted dealing with light issues, but not noise, if only the considerations of residents, human beings as well as bats, were taken into account in the same way. I'll move finally on to continuous noise levels. The NIA, the Noise Impact Assessment produced for this development, was produced on a computer model and is in fact measured, if you look at the photograph above you, from one of the further corners on the pitch, not the closest to the western side. The mitigation measures, I'm afraid, do not take account adequately of the noise of either a whistle or a hockey ball hitting a backboard, which I have a recording of. Unfortunately, I can't play for you.
Could you come to conclusion, please, Mr. Shelby?
I will, of course. In summary, this is not an Embrook School scenario. The application is in a completely different environment. It must be considered on its own merits. It is ill-conceived, and the subsequent planning report has made a series of flawed assumptions in a number of areas.
Okay, thank you.
On behalf of the local residents...
Mr. Shilek, 3 minutes as well. Thank you very much. I'm now going to read out a statement from Maria G, who's board member for Westford. Thank you. I hope I'll be able to read it in 3 minutes. This application differs from similar local applications, Embrook School, due to the location of the sports facility in relation to the nearby housing. Therefore, the Embrook School approval is not a precedent for this development in terms of local amenity effects. This application should not be considered until after a site visit has been carried out, preferably at dusk, to appreciate the effects on residents and on wildlife and the differences from the Embrook application. There is no existing acoustic barrier to houses in Denby Close because the tree canopy starts more than 8 metres from ground level. The noise impact assessment is not convincing in this regard, and I would urge the Council to carry out its own assessment, especially as there is a proposal for use every day, including weekends and bank holidays, maximum 0800 to 2100. A visit would allow appreciation of the need for an acoustic barrier. Should the application be approved, I would like local members to be involved in drawing up the noise management scheme mentioned in the condition on noise management, condition 6. The assessment of effects on bats, a protected species, and other wildlife considers only light, contrary to the representations made that noise will affect wildlife. The survival of bats is adversely affected by noise in the foraging and commuting space of the bat population in the period before evening activity and during hibernation. An additional assessment of the effects of noise on this protected species must be carried out before the application can be considered. There are security and safety issues for boarders, open site and local residents, only a ditch or a barrier due to changed use and extended hours. A risk assessment by the developers of changing from current after-school use to commercial use, including football and hockey, is essential. Should the application be approved, will the Council undertake to measure the light spillage when the mugger is in operation to ensure that it meets the requirements of the Planning Commission? If it doesn't meet requirements, there should be some mitigation measures put in place, such as additional planting or different hours of operation to allow for residents quiet enjoyment of their properties. The report at once considers only school use and at the same time future community use. The conclusions of the planning officer appear only to be for school use, clause 27. The contents of the report should be separated out to consider both outcomes, especially as hours of commercial and community use have the potential to exceed those for school use. That's the end of the statement. And I come to, there's no local member, so who would like to speak?
Can I make a point? Just a point of correction that I was not available for the site visit, so there were 6 of us attending. All right. And just one question, having not been on the site visit, the home of Mr. Sheldon looks out across the field. There are no fences that separate his property from the mugger, proposed mugger, is that right?
As per that.
Yeah, that's what I saw, yeah, I was just checking that that is the case. So. That's it, yes, so there are no fences that separate.
just around.
Chestnut fence.
The chestnut, yeah. So, would there be provision for fencing to go up that would perhaps give a little bit more security and privacy?
When you refer privacy, do you mean acoustic privacy or visual?
Visual privacy, I'm thinking more than.
The issue of overlooking from the actual facility wasn't considered to be an adverse concern. Parking area is here. The changing facilities are in the sports hall, and competitors or players will walk in that area there. It's also not a competitive size pitch, so it's likely to have lower crowd participation, so the overlooking issue wasn't considered to be a concern.
Thank you. I don't know if you made notes of what I read out. Would you like to pick some of the points up?
I can try. There's quite a few of them.
Yes.
I think the case of them may be better on some of them. In terms of the fence, you were saying, there's always opportunity to put in fence afterwards if there's an issue of privacy. It's not included as part of this application. It's not included as part of the recommendation to you, which is the only issue I see there. I was just scanning through the conditions to see is there anywhere we can put that in. So there's always opportunity to do that, but the problem is I don't know the site well enough to know if there's implications visually, if there's implications on existing trees, and on the site itself. So it's not something I can tell you here and now, unfortunately.
Some of the Mr. Sheldon was talking really from quite a lot about the position, the privacy issue from Danbury Close.
Yeah.
And he questioned whether officers had actually looked at the site from that position. And the shortest distance, I think the shortest distance to the proposed area is given as 51 in the report. Mr. Sheldon said it was 30. Could you comment on those?
My measurements are taken off the aerial view, council's mapping aerial view, so aside from checking again, I'd stand by the 51 metres to the property boundary.
There was a question about the bat. The bat survey not mentioning the noise, only light, is that right?
So once the lights go off, the players, the users and the pitch ceases, so the noise levels will cease when the light levels cease. So that's the intention behind the condition.
On that note, our biodiversity officer, who's an expert in all that field, he hasn't objected on the basis of a noise impact on the bats. And clearly he's looked at both the noise and both the visual impact from the floodlights. So he doesn't have an objection, so the case officer clearly didn't raise one.
Okay, I think I'll have up to members who would like to speak. Rochelle?
Is the case officer or the officer you just spoken about actually an expert in bats, or is he just an expert in wildlife in general, first of all? Second of all, I have about 4 studies here for bats that show that the intense noise and, result in increased body temperature with noise and strongest responses from morning till evening, just for their active phase. I have a few more if you really like them. I think it'll probably bore you to death, but they are important to the bats, and I think you're not taking into account really and truthfully what effect they will have on the bats. I think there's a summary idea of, gee, this is okay, it looks all right, but it's not really looking at it. It's also not looking at the effects of the noise. You're saying you'll put noise fencing possibly if afterwards. I'm not sure about the residents, but I don't think the residents would really like the idea of, well, who's going to enforce the fact that they have to have a noise barrier there if it's going to keep too much noise? Are you going to make sure that all of the children are not going to be making any noise, their parents are not going to be making any noise during this practice? I'm not sure I'd want to live right next to that either personally, but that's not something, that's not a planning consideration.
So our biodiversity officer is not an expert in bats, but he deals with this day in, day out. He's more of an expert than any of us in this room. And he looked at the reports. The reports are generally written by people who have got qualifications to do bats or whatever species they're looking at. So that has been reviewed and vetted. The idea that it's fine, we will accept that because that's what we've been told as professional officers. We have to rely on their expertise. In terms of the noise fence, I mean, you look beside the school, it's noisy, there's no question about that. I mean, you look at the existing use, you've got a pitch there, you've got tennis courts, so there is noise. I live near a school, I know how noisy it can be. So the idea of putting a fence up around every school to try and screen the noise from the residents, one, it will probably cause issues of antisocial behaviour, because where do you put the fence? You have an area in between the residential properties and school potentially, which nobody's using, nobody's managing. There's lots of pressure, so you would never put a fence up unless it's the last resort. You can see the fences next to roads, how badly they get graffiti and things like that. So it's not a straightforward case of we put a fence up and it fixes the problem.
I live next to a school as well, but the children are there during the day. They're not there on Saturday, they're not there on Sunday, they're not there on bank holidays. It's very quiet those times. So this is not saying that they will be playing there during those times when normally you would expect to have some privacy and reasonable levels of noise, but not necessarily children playing very loudly in that area. Well, these are adults possibly as well.
This is supplying community facilities, isn't it, by opening up to the general public?
Yes, the Sport England promote the dual use of such facilities. So the intention of this facility is for school use, but they do promote after school use, adaptive use of facilities for general public. The community lease agreement will deal with how that's measured, how that's managed.
Okay, thank you. Carl?
Thank you. The first thing I'd say is there's a lot of objections on this for what is seemingly quite a minor application, which kind of starts you thinking, because there's not going on here. Obviously, in planning law, the number of objections are irrelevant. What matters is what you say in terms of whether you come up with something which is a problem. And I don't know whether they have or not yet. The points that the objector made, the resident, Mr. Sheldon, talking about the details, I'm not sure it was a design statement or the thing about the site is surrounded on all sides by woodland or trees. I mean, I guess it is, but in terms of the light, as we've seen from the photos when we went the other day, that clearly Deadly Close is completely open to any light. It might be coming through. The trees obviously got spring growth on them, the leaves and so on. So that's the first thing to say, is that true? Is that what the assessment said? Was it wrong? And does that matter? Is another question. And secondly, the noise assessment. Who provided that?
The design and access statement does make a fairly generic comment about it being screened from surrounding properties. I disagree with that statement. It is going to be visible. The facility will be visible and the lights will be visible. So there's two issues. It's light spillage, direct light spillage. And this is what that plan demonstrates, is that there won't be any light spillage of surrounding residences. Light glare, there's no dispute that there will be lights visible from surrounding residences in Denby and Hartgate Close. The scale of which was considered to be acceptable based on its level of separation and its location within a settlement boundary. The noise assessment was undertaken by the applicant and reviewed by Council's Environmental Health Officer. and they've accepted the recommendations and the mitigation measures that have been imposed in that condition, in that report, and that forms a condition of the recommendation. I'd add that the primary noise issues are the referee's whistle, players, general noise from players' voices, hockey sticks, hockey balls hitting the backboard. And it was only the referee's whistle that did exceed the recommended levels, and it was felt that the level of whistle use would not be sufficient to warrant concern. In addition to, in combination with the condition limiting the hours of use of the facility.
Just to clarify on the diagram where you have the numbers which show what the intensity of the light is at that point, whether it's 0, does that mean you can't see the light at all?
Yes, there's no light.
No light at all?
Well, you can see the light, so you can see the glare of the light below, but there's no light spillage. So when you're standing in a 0 bit, where around you will be dark.
Thank you. Hannes.
Thank you, Chairman. Just taking up one point that was commented, I think it's Carl. It does seem strange when you think the number of houses which could be construed to be directly affected by this is probably only about 9, and therefore, as Carl said, the number of objections isn't in itself anything, but it does seem rather strange that we have all these objections from houses which won't be able to be anywhere near the site. But my main point is taking up mitigation about noise. On page 205, paragraph 35, it talks about, for instance, the hockey backboards, and refers to section 12.5. And I was scrabbling around trying to see what that meant, and then realised when I looked at condition 7 that it's talking about the noise impact assessment, which we haven't seen. And so I do wonder, because it's been called into question, whether this is something that we should be able to look at more constructively in order to satisfy ourselves and the residents that we've been fully robust in looking at this application.
That's, yeah, I mean, that's, if members want to do that, they're perfectly reasonable to look at the noise assessment. It's a lot of technical detail in there, they're not the most interesting or fun documents to read, but it is available. I mean, it's a public document, so it's up to you really if you want to do that.
I mean, would it be possible for lay people such as us to understand it?
I haven't actually seen this one myself, but they normally have an executive summary, which will obviously cover most of the points. They should have a guide within it that sets out what the 3 decibels is, but you get a comparison, like a Hoover or something like that. So there is documents in there. Whether, I mean, obviously there is their own procedures that the case officer reviews it and provides their executive summary of what was given, and the environmental health officer has done that. So they've given the case officer and their advice on if they think there's harm or not, which the case officer has taken forward as being acceptable. So it's really up to whether you are willing to have a look at that document or want to look at that document or not really.
But if we do, we need to defer the application.
Yes.
I can provide a general summary of how the noise report dealt with the issue, if that's what you would like to hear tonight. I'm not the environmental health officer, so I'm not managing noise levels, but I can follow the methodology and the recommendation mitigation measures.
You're supposed to read it out to us to avoid. No,
not really. No.
In view of the discussion about the noise impact assessment and the questioning of some of the distances, which I think the committee would like to be more certain about, I would propose that we defer this item.
Okay, so you're proposing we defer to get clarification on distances and to get
the executive summary of the noise impact assessment? Will the executive summary be sufficient? Yeah, can I have a seconder for that? Seconded by Rochelle. Okay, those in favour of deferring for those two purposes, please. Sorry?
I absolutely agree with doing that, but I think we should keep going on some of the comments. I don't know if everybody's finished the issues with tonight's application, then come back to that. I fully support what Angus has said and Rachel. But I've got other issues I want to raise tonight before we're going to defer. And that's how you normally run things.
I just wonder whether the extra information might change.
Oh no, it's not going to change it for the good. It's believe me. No, it's not going to change it for the good. No, exactly.
So, as a proposer of the deferment, I'm willing to defer that deferment until we hear the other comments.
Okay, well, we'll forget about that though, and we'll come back to it. Yeah, maybe on set, those at some time. Wait.
Yes, as the gentleman said, you know, it's very clear that, I don't know, Simon, if you could put the picture up, it's very deceiving until you go on site. See there, no, go back, that's it. See there, you look at that and you think, well, you know, that's not too bad. But when you, well, if you go on site, no, it's, if you go on site and that whole chestnut fencing, it's, and I know you never saw that, Bill, but it is very, very, very visible. And I just wonder, and I don't know if this happened, but you would think an independent school in that location would have done an extensive consultation with its neighbours. Because if you've got, and I'll come back to your point, Carl, if you've got 65 people surrounding your school complaining, you've got a problem. And you've got to work with your neighbours because, you know, these people could probably, I don't know what happens on a normal school day. But, so that's the first thing. So I think we have got an issue there, and I would have hoped that any good independent school would have done its homework and gone and spoke to all of it, especially those people who live in Denby Close. That's the first thing. The second thing is, what are the rules around increasing, because it's not going to be a competitive pitch, as I understand it, because you can't play competitive matches there, it's going to be a training pitch of sorts. So, do they have to open that out to the general public? Because if it's only going to be used for training, as somebody said, it's not an Embrook. You know, I'm certainly not trying to say that this has special conditions, but it is a kind of a special site, smack bang in the middle of a woodland and countryside, and bordering onto houses that don't have security fences. You know, are there specific rules? Is any of this funding coming from Sports England, whereby there are strings attached? I don't know. And could we have restrictions on this site as it happens today? So it's in normal school hours, it doesn't go up to 8 or 9 o'clock at night, but it's not used at weekends unless the school is using it at weekends. That's the next thing. The page 201, you've got, it will be enclosed by a 3-metre high fence around the perimeter of the court. Is that correct?
A fence that is typical of like a tennis court fence or a sports pitch fence, yes.
Oh, so it's a chain link fence? Yes. Oh, okay. So it's kind of misleading there, but anyway, I'll take that on board. But so they're my main points. Are they obliged to allow this to be outside of the curtilage of normal school hours, if they get it from Sports England, because this is an independent school, and are they banned by Sports England rules? And I think the other one is, I think it's poor show by the school. I think they should have done an extensive consultation. They obviously haven't done it, and I think it's bad on them.
Have you considered we were fundamentally changing the application, which in fact was refused, thereby restricting it only to school times? Would that be right?
So the proposal doesn't actually have a management of the site as part of its application. It has, I suspect, if it's got Sport England funding, it probably does have some conditions of use. Yeah, so it won't be. It's very rarely Sport England will hand out money if it's not just for the school. But I don't know the detail of it, so I couldn't answer that.
Well, we had one very similar. I'm trying to recall where it was around Sports England, where I can't remember what site it was, where we tried to make the actual pitch smaller, and Sports England said that it wouldn't. It was, yeah, it wouldn't fund it. Was it?
Pembroke was smaller. If it was smaller, they couldn't fund
Yeah,
it.
now-
It couldn't be used at certain times.
So that kind of answers the question that this site doesn't meet competitive rules. So therefore, are they getting funding, and therefore do they have to offer it out? And therefore, why don't they stay within the parameters of how they operate now? Questions. These are all things that we need to look at following Angus's development.
Sport England have noted, they have recommended a full-size pitch. They've noted that it's unfortunate that it's not full-size. It's only undersized because of the protected trees to the southern boundary. Also note, just to clarify, when I say it's not used for competition, that's competitive sporting matches. It's my understanding that it'll still be used for social evening events, like 5-on-5 football or adult netball, adult hockey events or something like that. So it is competitive in that sense when you've got two teams playing against each other. So it's not limited to training only. Sport England have requested a community use agreement that will be reviewed and agreed by them in consultation with us. So they do have a role to play in terms of what they're requesting. But they've looked at this application purely on community use of it. So they have looked into the issue of the impacts upon neighbours that will arise from the additional community use. So it's a balance to be played there. They will always promote the after-school use of it to provide to meet their objectives of Sport England in terms of increasing participation within the community.
Are they aware of all these complaints?
No, they were consulted and they provided a response prior to within the first couple of days of the consultation period.
If we're going to defer this, then you've got the opportunity to ask for further information to go back.
Yes.
And in a second report, perhaps you'd like to propose, in addition to Angus's proposal. I'm sorry.
Anton, if you defer something to look at about 2 or 3 points, when you come back, you can't actually introduce any further new points. You can only discuss the ones that were discussed on the first round. That happened at a previous occasion. Where was it? Just recently, where we discussed something we didn't like and we deferred it. And when we came back, we had lots of extra points. We weren't allowed to refer to it because it hadn't been one of the reasons. Sure. Is that still the case?
We haven't. If we defer, we haven't approved. If we defer, we haven't approved any of this. So we go back to the start again. Consider it afresh with the extra information that comes from the
which would allow us to have additional points if we felt they were necessary this time.
We can do anything.
Yeah.
Let's clarify.
I'm just wondering whether you're thinking about when you refuse an application.
Yes.
And then once it's refused, you're unable to come back with any extra reasons for refusal.
Right.
Yeah.
I remember just the fact we couldn't add any extra new bits. I just wanted to confirm.
This is different. It's a bit more laid back than that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Would you like to say what you'd like in addition to Angus's points?
What I would like is, I would like to understand more about the involvement of Sports England and the restrictions around if they're not funding, it's an obvious question. It's then down to the school, it's the school's decision. But if they are, and they seem to be an influencer here, if they are an influencer, so because they are giving a grant funding, what are the conditions of that grant funding? And what does it restrict, or what does it impose on the school to be doing outside of normal school hours? Because I think somebody said earlier, if you live next door to a school, you know, you wouldn't really expect to be having activities going up to 9 o'clock every day.
Or 8 o'clock on holidays.
Yeah, 8 o'clock on holidays. So my question is around the rules of A, is it getting funding from Sports England, and therefore what are the restrictions? If it's not, could we put a condition on here that it's only within school hours as per the parameters that are in place now?
So Wayne, just to clarify, we need to be very careful about we can ask for the information in the context of finding out the usage. So we can ask, is it being funded in terms of the restrictions that they may impose, but that has to be related to a condition material to this application. So the funding is really, I know you see it as relevant, but it's not relevant to the decision making of this planning application. So what we can do is we can go back, requests of the applicant, what they're doing in terms of have they got arrangements to open longer than the period you're talking about, with respect to the condition we're talking about, as opposed to asking the question, are you getting funding, what's the conditions?
Yeah, okay.
We just need to be very careful on that.
Yeah.
So we can request additional information of them.
Exact word.
Yeah.
Okay. So we combine. We combine Angus's proposal with the deferment with the points Wayne made, and we will. An officer will draft it because it's difficult to do right here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Rochelle.
And what other uses are they planning to use this field for? You said other social activities, that can be a big difference as far as time goes, as far as noise goes, things like this. You just said that before. Or even football. If you're playing five-a-side football, they may decide to have some beers afterwards. Now, how are we going to know if we're going to do this or not? We'd like to know exactly what they plan to use other than these particular sports.
Right. We'll come up with something.
Okay.
Okay. I'll take the vote on. Angus, are you happy to accept the additions? So Angus is, as proposed, did you second it, Wayne?
No, I
didn't. Charlotte seconded. So are we clear about what we're doing here?
Yeah.
Okay. So those in favour of the deferral? And that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Just to clarify what Bill said at the beginning, you were not at the site visit, there were 6 offers there. Right, the next one, number 5 was there.
Now there are 5.
Now go on to item 93, which is application number 190233, which is Lord Harris Hall, Mole Road in Simplesham.
Thank you, Chair.
Andrew, sorry.
Thank you.
This is a full planning application for demolition of Lord Harris Court care home, which is currently 88 bedrooms, and the erection of a new 45-bedroom care home and 60 assisted living apartments, which will receive 2 use clubs, together with associated parking, landscaping, and amenity space provision. The previous application, 180194, was refused on several grounds, including impact on the character of the area, overbearing and overlooking on neighbouring properties, impact on trees, insufficient information on ecology, and failure to secure an appropriate Section 106 for obligations. In order to address these concerns of the previous applications, the proposal has been amended to include the following key changes, as you can see outlined here. The care home would now have 27 fewer rooms, a total net gain of 17 rooms overall. The care home building footprint will be reduced by 29%. The care home is reduced by a single storey from 2 to 3 stories down to 2 storey, and the assisted living building footprint reduced by 9%. Overall, the facade design of both buildings has been broken up with different elevation treatments, and separation distances between existing neighbouring dwellings has also been increased, and also we've had additional information on ecology provided. It's a relatively large site, 2 hectares in size, with several relationships with existing residential dwellings at various boundary points to consider. Therefore, for clarity, I've colour-coded some various points of development on this slide. Firstly, on the western side, we'll note the green area marked here, and we visited this on the committee site visit yesterday. And this is the relationship with 2 residential properties that are accessed via a track off Mill Lane. The back-to-back distance, or actually back-to-front distance, between the proposed assisted living block and Firdale, which is the nearest property, is 26 metres, which exceeds the council's guidance. This slide shows the northeast elevation that would face towards the rear of the 3 new infill houses that are located to the rear of Mayfield. The back-to-back distances here are detailed in the extract plan shown on page 245 of your agenda, and also meet the council standards. The closest window would be just under 21 metres, but these would be obscure glazed as they relate to a stair core in the proposed care home building. The eastern elevation of the care home block is shown here, and this shows the reduced scale from the proposal in the context of the Mole Road frontage. Previously this was to be a 3-storey arrangement. The previously refused scheme is also shown on page 240 of the main agenda. So going back, the red area there is shown, which is the frontage onto Mole Road, and that's the elevation proposed there, and that's the Mole Road frontage. This shows the northeast elevation of the assisted living block, which is designated as orange here at the top of the site, and this faces towards other properties to the north of the application site. The elevations here have been broken up by using a variety of elevational treatments and roof lines, thereby further helping to reduce the overall appearance of bulk, especially when viewed from the properties to the north. As indicated in your members' update, we've recently received amended plans today, which show revised boundary measures to include ecologically friendly fencing. Our ecologist has not had a chance to look at that, so therefore officers are requesting a delegated authority to deal with that particular point. So either we deal with it under condition 15 as is proposed, or if it's acceptable, we'll include those amended plans under condition 2. Also in the update report there's just a clarification on the fact that highways have considered the proposal acceptable in accordance with also the staff travel plan. In conclusion, officers consider that the proposal satisfactorily addresses the reasons for refusal of the previous application by virtue of a much improved design, greater separation of distance from neighbours, tree protection measures, additional ecological information, and an agreement to secure a Section 106 for 1, an employment skills plan, and 2, also a clause to ensure that the C2 assisted living block retains as such and shall not be converted to C3 dwellings. As such, the proposal is recommended for approval as outlined on page 224 of your agenda.
Thank you, Andrew. We have one speaker, Stuart Cricket, who is the agent, please.
Good evening. Morning, staff. Everyone hear me? I'd like to thank you all for the opportunity to address you here this evening. I'm here on behalf of the applicants, the RMBI and Castle, who are both experienced and established operators in the care sector. We're pleased to see and fully support the recommendation to approve the application, which represents the culmination of a process first started with your officers back in June 2017. As you've heard, the preceding application sterling last year was refused due to concerns with the overall scale, bulk, height, massing and proposed neighbouring relationships. In response to this, we've undertaken a comprehensive and positive review of the proposals which have led us to the scheme submitted in this application. As noted in the report, proposals, overall bulk, massing, height has been considerably reduced while still ensuring that we deliver a high quality and state-of-the-art care facilities, making efficient use of this previously developed site's potential and achieving sustainable development. I would also like to take the opportunity to reaffirm that there are no adverse residential amenity relationships being proposed. There will be no adverse landscape character impacts created. Loss of the survey of trees 33 and tree 34 have been explained and justified within the application submitted documents. In summary, the loss of these trees has been accepted on the basis that their removal will preserve the full potential and longevity of survey tree 35, which is a quality regarded to be of national importance. It's a significant tree, and this proposal will make sure that that tree maintains and reaches its full destiny. There will be no adverse highway impacts generated by the development. The applicants consider there is more than one opportunity or location where we could find the additional parking spaces that officers have sought. For that reason, we've supported the conditions that have been represented to you in the report. Overall, there are no technical consultative objections that have been raised by this application. We see that as a real encouraging sign and reflection of the hard work that's been put in by both the applicant and your officers. And we are looking forward and hoping that you will find it to be able to support the application and the recommendations before you this evening. I think I'd like to just end by saying that this development will provide the replacement of the existing care home, which has limited remaining lifetime, with 2 high-quality care facilities which will be able to meet the needs of residents with a full range of residential nursing and dementia care requirements. Furthermore, both of the new facilities will make a significant contribution and improvement to the well-being, health and later living accommodation and housing which is available for older people within the borough. Thank you again for your time this evening.
Thank you. I was mistaken earlier when I said there was only one speaker. There are 3 speakers. The second one is Mike Larson, who is a resident. Please.
Thank you for the invitation. I'm here representing myself and my immediate neighbours of Mayfield. A number of comments I'd like to make, but given it's 3 minutes, I'll try and limit it to 3, which I think are more important. The first being, we believe, as a group of neighbours, that the development of the new care home is still one of high density, bulk, and scale. And this is basically based on the fact that if you look at the map behind you, or the graphic, the original proposal, 194, was for a replacement home. So it was, and 88 rooms goes to 76. And you can imagine on a space which was just formerly a bowling green, you're taking an 88-bedroom facility which has parking issues at the moment with cars parked on there, and you're trying to fit it on something which is just over a fifth bigger. And so that proposal was roundly, as the former speaker said, roundly rejected by this council as being one of great scale. So what has happened in the interim is that the access which was along the private road, because of the covenant between Citizen Court, was not granted, so they had to move it to the south, to the north at least, and they needed to look at T2 tree protection, RPA. And so what they've actually done is pushed the whole structure back. And so the density and scale is even greater. Yes, back-to-back boundaries are just within the council's recommendation, but there are distances to borders which are less than 10 meters, 9 meters. And so, although it's not as overbearing, because it was truly a huge structure, it still impinges on the neighbours. The second thing I'd just like to make a point of is that because it's no longer a replacement, it is effectively a standalone development of the care home, and there's a phased approach because there are 80 or odd residents in the existing care home. The phases could take quite some time, so I'd just like to put it on record that it's something that should be looked at. The final thing, if I could just say, is about those two trees that were mentioned, T34 and T33. They live in harmony with the T35 protected TPO tree, and there is no reason, because this has been for decades, that they've lived in symbiotically, for them to be removed. The reasons given, and I quote the arboriculturist, he says, "I fully appreciate that this might be viewed as a cynical attempt on my part to remove the perfectly good oaks, but there are three pertinent factors. T35 is truly spectacular, it is, but it's not impacted really. The space created by the removal will not be used for the development. No, it won't, but it will remove some screening, major screening."
Could you cut your conclusion, please?
Yes, and the third one is the commitment on behalf of my clients would serve as an example to the owner of the tree, which I really see as a lead. So,
thank you. Thank you. And lastly, Paul Fishwick, member for Orange. Again.
Thank you, Chairman. I have a number of objections to make on this application. Firstly, balconies overlooking residential properties. Currently there's no balconies, these are external balconies. They overlook Mayfield views. The bedrooms have balconies overlooking these residential properties, and the same applies to balconies side-on overlooking the Mill Lane track, which runs around the back. That's on that orangey area. Oak trees T33 and T34, there's no reason whatsoever to remove these trees. They are currently a screen for residential properties in Mayfields, and they're both growing on the outside of the large oak tree T35. Impact of additional motorised traffic. The application states it's proposed the morning changeover period to be completed by 8 AM, prior to the morning rush hour. However, traffic starts to queue on Long Road, King Street Road, from 7:30 AM. And 7:30 AM is outside of the actual development itself. That's where the queue is at that time. Therefore, there will be an impact on already congested roads. Parking. It's understood that the current agreement with the overflow parking in Singleton Court area only relates to the current layout and not the planned. If this is correct, and the overflow parking was not permitted in Singleton Court area, then this additional parking would impact on nearby residential roads, Mayfields and St Mary's, and Winnersh Parish Council car park opposite. A smoking shelter is located adjacent to residential houses. This needs to be moved and relocated away from those properties. Shadowing of the building. There is concern shadowing of the building, the sheer size and mass block of the building on the residential properties located in Mayfields. Concern over light pollution. It's difficult to ascertain from the application when any external lights will be switched off at night, and therefore there will be impact on residential properties living nearby. Walking from the site to access rail or bus at Winnersh Station or on the Reading Road is partly along substandard footways and less than 1 metre wide and adjacent to the busy B3030 Mole Road, King Street Lane, where pedestrians have to walk in single file and have to actually wait for other people to pass. And finally, on page 233, the Winnersh Parish Council statement is actually incorrect. It's been cut and pasted incorrectly in your document. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Right, that's one of the points there. Can I comment on the generally on the density, bulk and scale?
Yes, overall, as I've outlined, the proposal has been significantly reduced in terms of the previous application. Probably the most fundamental is this area here, which has been reduced from 3-storey down to 2-storey, but also this portion here, which is completely removed, an element which extends further into the site. But over and above that, the general relationship with neighbours has been pulled back, generally between 1.5 and 2 metres in some instances and more in others, to retain appropriate back-to-back distances. At the moment, we have a large building on site. No doubt this will appear as a change for neighbouring residents, but in design terms, the 2-storey will appropriately deal with streeting along Mole Road, and in bulk and massing terms is not adverse in terms of character and impact on the character and appearance.
Yeah, thank you. Oak trees, T31 to 33, why is it necessary to fell them?
Well, it's necessary to fell them. I guess that is maybe a question for the applicant, but I mean, we've assessed the application on face value as it's been put in, and our landscaping tree officer has not objected to their loss on the basis of the key tree on the site is being retained, plus in addition to the additional landscaping we're going to get, which will be secured by condition. I'm not sure offhand whether they were maybe in a lower category tree specimen, the other ones. But as I say, the professional advice on that has been provided by our tree and landscape officer.
Okay, they're not TPO trees then?
No.
Okay, could you comment on the assertion of the balconies overlooking Mayfield views?
Yes, Mayfield Mews is here, and the side of their properties is here, so we have effectively a back-to-side relationship. Now that distance, I think we're looking about 24 to 26 metres, so it far exceeds the council's requirements. Whether they are balconies or windows, that is considered a suitable distance in terms of that relationship.
Thank you. Motorised traffic. I think the indication was the start would be in place by 8 AM, but the traffic builds up much earlier in Winnersh along King Street Lane, Mel Road.
Maybe I defer to my High Priest colleague on that one.
Well, in terms of the congestion on the local roads, we were there at the site visit at 8 o'clock. There was nothing in the immediate vicinity. It was quite quiet on Moor Road. Sorry?
Not normally. With the Winchell League Road now, the traffic is there back all the way to Mill Lane.
But that's what we did find at the site visit.
I think Mill Road, Chairman, I think Mill Road had only just opened, so I don't think many public had realised that. So I think the traffic pattern probably wasn't as it normally would be.
Okay, thanks, Angus. Sandlesham Court is used for parking. The whole site is owned by the same group, so that's not a problem?
Well, the application has been considered as it should be on the basis of what's within the red line, so it has to consume its own smoke in terms of parking and any other material planning considerations. Our Highways Department considered that the amount of parking suitably can accommodate on the site, subject to getting 7 additional spaces in at this point here. We've recommended a condition for that to happen. So on the proviso that we have an amended plan for those 7 spaces, it meets the council standards. The applicant has agreed in principle that that can be provided and is happy with the pre-commencement condition. It is over and above that, it is still fact that at the present time both sites are in operation by the same owner, so there may be a degree of cooperation in terms of parking as well. However, we've considered the application site as is.
Thank you. Smoking shelter shouldn't be near a residential house.
I mean, I guess you're going to have residents and potential visitors using the outdoor space for sitting out and potentially smoking, whether there's a shelter there or not. So it wouldn't anticipate it to be a significant issue. The back-to-back distances you have here in terms of the actual building are generally across the site between 24 and 26 metres. So they're more than adequate. You would have screening and fencing along that point, so you wouldn't necessarily see, certainly not from ground floor to where the smoking shelter is. I don't envisage that that really is going to cause any significant amenity issues.
Thank you. Shadowing of buildings in Mayfields from the bulk of the building.
Well, Mayfields is here, but obviously clearly the greater impact will be on the 3 newer properties that have been built off here, which I think 2 of those, one I think is occupied and 2 are under construction at the moment. But as I say, even these arrangements are 24 to 26 metres, and looking at that in terms of bulk and overshadowing, an assessment can be done in terms of taking a 25-degree line from the window of the back of these properties, and the building that's proposed wouldn't abut that line, and that's a general kind of rule of thumb in terms of assessing both light but also the overbearing nature of the scheme as well. Clearly, given there's nothing here at the moment, it is going to be a change for the residents that are here and that are going in here. However, in terms of the council standards, it meets those. So I would suggest we wouldn't have grounds to refuse on those grounds of overbearing impact or loss of light or overlooking.
Again, light pollution, I think has been asked, when would the external lights be switched on?
Yes, we've suggested a condition to deal with any external lighting details. Condition 21. So we'll get information on that before occupation of the premises. we would discuss the information submitted with our environmental health team and establish whether they were happy with it in terms of potential light spill.
Okay, thank you. See you again.
Smoking shelter. You may think that people are walking around and smoking possibly, but having a smoking shelter is going to concentrate the smoking in that one area. And if you're just walking around when it's raining, when it's doing something else, when it's not so nice outside, which does happen on occasion in Wedge, just occasion, which is a lovely place to live in. But it should be on the front part where it's affecting the outside, not the residents nearby. And the trees also should be retained. There's no reason to take them down. It does provide screening for local residents.
Thank you. I'm also going to talk about the smoking shelter. It's clearly for the staff. I'm assuming that the residents of the care facility are not going to be sneaking outside for a tab, and if they are, they're probably not going to be doing it in the area they're supposed to be. So it's obviously for the staff, which is fine, but it's actually next to the point where it's under 22 metres. It's 21 metres from the back to the east. The four houses that are being built there, the new ones, the second one down, it's 21 metres from that. That's the building is 21 metres from that, but the smoking shelter is in between the building and the boundary, so it's even closer than that. So, if I was sat in my back garden, you would smell that with the wind in the right direction. And okay, that's not a massive problem. But looking at the rest of the site, there's plenty of space to put this somewhere else. Loads of spaces to put somewhere else. So I don't see why that can't be moved. I mean, whether it's, I don't think it's the thing that written the planning application now, but it's certainly a no-brainer to move it somewhere else. Yeah.
I've advised Mark to move it. Where to, I don't know.
I didn't have a particular concern with it in its current position, which is just about here. However, there may be scope to add a condition to get details on a relocated position. I'm not sure whether it may be something we can discuss with the agent. I can see the agent nodding, so I would suggest maybe in addition to look at a revised location, maybe something further away from your property boundaries.
Okay, so that could be, if we approve this, we delegate that driver's license. Yes. Have you finished, Carl?
I had a couple of...
Let me bring it up this, but then we'll come back to you.
Yeah,
Thank you, Chairman. I think that additional condition would be a good idea to allay fears about this sort of area. It does seem, at least, that this is a much better proposal than the one a few years before. I couldn't find anywhere reference on the plans we have is which is T33 and 34. For the record, could they be pointed out, please? Good point.
I would have to check our tree survey that's been put in. Can I come back to you on that?
I think it's necessary.
I'm not saying it's necessarily relevant to the decision, but having been to the site.
This man can tell us.
Would you like to point out?
Yeah.
They're not on here. Well, actually, if you look very closely, we'll see two circles here.
Oh, yeah.
Those are the two trees to be removed.
So close to Mole Road.
Yeah, well, it's right there. Close to Mole Road, and in fact, this council has already agreed that they provided unity, but said they weren't under threat. But because of the last proposal, they remained. In this proposal, mysteriously they disappeared, but the horticulturist has said it's because it's impacting on this tree, which interestingly enough.
I think we've identified that there. Thank you for your help there.
Yeah, thank you for that, Chairman. I do hope that the officers will find a way to provide equal fences. It sounds eminent sense because one can see that from the playing fields opposite, if any animal manages to cross Mole Road without getting knocked down, it is a corridor through the site and on to the countryside at the back end past the lane off Mill Lane. And on that point, when we went round there, we walked around the two properties there, it did seem there would be a reasonable distance, plus the screening, which I believe the landscape plan will enhance along that track. So I'm talking about the top left-hand corner, the green box in that area. So I think that's good. The parking issue seems to be covered by the condition. And somebody mentioned about the footway outside. I don't see that really being relevant to this application. It's not desirable, but I think there has to be other ways to address that.
I think Patrick wants to say something.
Just point clarification, sorry. You showed the tree highlighted as the tree, just so they couldn't see what's it around.
What's this about?
The trees. You showed the trees. Make sure it's the right tree that you showed.
Okay, anybody else wish to speak? If not, so we have an extra condition which is that officers will be delegated with finding a suitable location for the smoking shelter. And we have to decide in the amendments update either to use condition 15. I'm sure I can't understand. Explain.
I'm suggesting that as we've only had the revised boundary treatment plan today, we've not had a chance for our colleagues to have a look at it. So what I'm suggesting is that you delegate authority to officers to deal with that in terms of either using the condition as I've suggested initially, or if it is acceptable following assessment with our ecologist, that we put that plan into condition 2 as an approval.
Condition 2? Yes.
So it's to give officers the either or scenario.
Okay, I see. Okay. We're happy with that. Wait.
I think that should be. Sorry, I think that should be in conjunction with the board member.
Board members, what? Chairman, board members.
And also the trees, retaining those 2 trees.
Sorry, on the trees, I don't know the site that well, but looking at where the trees are located in relation to the buildings, I think the problem you're going to find is as they get bigger, pressure becomes on the trees, so actually they will die.
We would like to see how close they are to with the ward members again.
This is a planning matter.
Well, I think, as the gentleman said, that if you look at drawing 57, revision C, and you look towards a very large, I would imagine it's an oak tree, and you look at the 2 circles that surround that oak tree, I would imagine the reason why they want them removed, because they actually, if you look, they go over the top of the building, so they would have to be removed.
Is that correct?
I don't understand why those circles. If that's not the case, why are those circles drawn in? Because they're cutting off half of that flank.
That's why it's show the root protection areas of the trees. So it's not necessarily the canopy, that's the root protection area to show.
That's the root protection area. Okay, so it's actually not extended over there.
That gets bigger as it gets older.
Could you go forward?
You measure up a metre. You go up a metre, you measure, and then you go around. Take this way. Please. Yeah, so in terms of the way you need to research like that. I'm a planning consultant, I'm not a cultural consultant, but in terms of generalities, the way the root protection area is drawn is based on standard methodology and the standard technique and approaches employed by horticulturists in accordance with their standards and guidance. So it is drawn at the point of where that tree is at and where it is expected to get to in its longevity of its life. That's the assessment that's made. So that is the area that if there is a conflict with that root protection area, that's when a judgment has to be made as to whether that tree will be able to continue to grow or whether there might be a solution or a reason for its removal. That's been the case that's been presented to you in the application documents that's been submitted. Your architectural consultant has reviewed that information in detail in full. There's found no reason to object to that. That is cited in the author's report. Ostensibly, whilst it is, we've taken on board the fact that it could be seen to be a cynical position to put forward, the reality is that it's been justified. It is that off-site grade A oak tree that has no longer lifespan beyond those two grade B trees, and therefore that loss has been justified on that basis. So that's the position.
Thank you. I think that's what we were thinking. Okay. Sharon.
However, things can be done to restrict the roots in that particular area, which is causing the problem. If you don't want to, you've done trees in lots of areas where you have a root ball in there and you have restrictions about how far the root can go. The root can go out that way instead of this way, or something like this, without having a problem.
Yes, it's part of the application. Thanks.
Jim, could I just draw members' attention to the bottom of page 252 in relation to these trees and our board report. I considered the proposed removal of trees T33 and T34 discussed in the report and conclude I have no objection. T33 and T34 currently compromise the growth of T35, which is considered to be a high-quality tree of national importance. Now, that's our expert saying that, and I don't believe that we really have the ability around this table to question that.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. I'll go to the recommendation. So the recommendation is on page 224. And we have an additional condition for the smoking shelter. And the other one as recommended by the officer. Okay, are we happy with that? Can I see those in favour, please? Those against? So that's 2 against and I think it's somewhere like 2. So that application is approved. I know you have to leave the room. And Angus will take over, Mr. Chairman.
Seems an awful long time since I've sat in this seat.
It is.
Somebody might tell me how many years it is. Anyway. Maybe not. Application 190395, which is Alexandra House for planning application for change of use.
Good afternoon all. I am presenting planning application reference number 190395, which is for the proposed change of use of the ground floor unit for a spin and nightclub at Alexandra House to a mixed use comprising retail use class A1 and office space use class B1A, plus fenestration changes to the building at ground floor level. This case is being presented at planning committee because the applicant is written by the council. The application site is located Wokingham Town Centre Conservation Area. The building contains a vacant nightclub at ground floor level and an office space at first and second floor level. There's a front elevation photograph of the building if one isn't aware of where it is. The proposal would provide 264 square metres of additional office floor space and 4 retail units ranging between 46 and 47 square metres. The proposal would provide appropriate town centre uses within a building that is situated within the town centre. There are no policies set out in the development plan which seeks the protection of nightclubs, and it should be noted that there is an assisted public house within close proximity of the application site, the Big House. The proposed external changes involves new door openings and fenestration changes along the northern and eastern elevation. The proposed external changes would be in keeping with the architectural style of the building and would respect the overall character and appearance of the conservation area. Here's some site visit photographs, northern elevation, which is the front entrance where the retail units are going to be, and the eastern elevation is a separate entrance to the office space. The nearest residential properties are located at the Plaza and Regent Court. However, given the surrounding context and the extant use of the application site, it is considered that the proposed mixed retail and office uses would not harm the living conditions of neighbouring occupiers. No parking spaces are being proposed as part of this application. However, the site is located in the town centre, meaning that potential customers to the proposed retail units and users of the office space would have good access to public transport. For those customers or employees who wish to drive, there is Elm Road car park which I've marked on this plan, within a relatively short walking distance to the site. The Council's Highways Department has raised no objection to this application. In determining this application, the Council is required to have regard to its obligations under the Quality Act 2010. It is considered that the proposal would not conflict with this Act. To conclude, the proposal complies with the relevant development plan policies and is consistent with the provisions of the NPPF. Planning officers therefore recommend the proposal is approved, subject to conditions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair, sorry, just to add, it's not in the members' update, but can I suggest, when you look at the report, that actually condition 5, which relates to hours of use, can be deleted, because it's not really relevant in this case, but that would be part of the members' update. Thank you.
Thank you. There was nobody listed to speak to this application. I guess the nearest ward member is Malcolm. Who wishes to... Oh yes, yeah, thank you. Sorry, thank you for reminding me. One of the borough councillors for West Ockendon has submitted a very short statement which I'll read out. It seems odd that the council is converting part of the building to office space, which appears to be an oversupply in Wokingham town. Given the current rate and amount of development, I trust that an analysis of the likely demands by tenants has been carried out, together with the risk assessment for the market value of the property if tenants cannot be found. Furthermore, I regret that there is still no car parking strategy for the council, and I know this application has no car parking associated with it. Just one thought on that comment there. Just down the road, Southgate House is about to be demolished as an office building, and so one could actually consider there is a local quid pro quo there. Anyway, fine.
Yes, that's the same thing. It's not up to us to decide what an applicant is going to do within this building, as long as it's the building is structured and the use is okay. It's a location in the town centre. It's useful for office if he thinks that is going to be suitable. If he thinks it's an alternative area for retail or something else, again, I don't think we should be saying he's not allowed to do that. Car parking, there are car park facilities in the area. Car parking is always an issue in the town centre, but it's down to the people who take the premises as an office and who work there to decide for themselves where they can park. I don't have any obvious queries or problems with the acceptance of this, personally, and it does create an opportunity for employment, which is always worthwhile. And as Councillor Russell said, if there's another office area being removed, then it compensates for part of it. So that's very project, so we in favour.
Thank you. Carl.
Thank you, Chair. I just note that, let's make the comments really. I know there's no comments from, well, there's one from the local member, but nothing on here. No comments from neighbours. The town council didn't comment. It's creating jobs, 10 jobs apparently. The site itself is kind of during the day, it's on that site where the building is, the frontage there is quite dead, because obviously it's used as a nightclub, so that's when it comes alive. But during the day it's pretty dead. Where it's going to be once the regeneration is finished, that's going to be leading to a lot of other opportunities, so it seems a good idea to put something there. And the changes are actually minimal, you know, the change of uses obviously, but in terms of just changing it, so there's shops there, you know, I think it's a sensible change of use, and that's why no one's complaining about it.
It ticks all the Durham boxes. Bill so.
No affordable housing.
No affordable shops.
With the retail units, facilities for waste disposal, is there nothing shown on the plan? What's the arrangements for collection and storage of the rubbish before it's collected?
Yeah, so you're right, there's nothing shown or mentioned within the planning statement or the plan. However, if you look at this site plan, there is scope to put refuse on the flank elevation. So you're looking towards the east. So where Denmark Street is, there's a private access road where servicing could take place, and there's a car park there at the moment. So refuse vehicles could go up Denmark Street, and the refuse storage could be by the flank wall where the car parking space is. And I don't see a problem with bringing very close proximity to Denmark Street.
You say could be. Is that going to be yes?
I think knowing the site, I think knowing where it is and seeing the land around, you could easily get refuse in there. It's not a problem. Especially the type of use it is, office use, and there's to be a small amount of retail in there, so it's not going to have a huge amount. So I think it's easily accommodated.
There's an element of them having large green bins sort of just round the corner of it from wall.
There's got to be some place there where Flag Club put all their stuff, so therefore there's got to be somewhere around the bins.
I see nobody else wishing to speak, so the recommendation on page 278, I believe we're deleting condition 5.
Yes, that's the recommendation.
Therefore, as in your papers, we're taking away condition 5. We're going to have those in favour of this development. And that is unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. Somebody wants to try and find the chairman.